Taoiseach, yesterday we had secondary schools closed across the country. Today we have secondary schools closed across the country, and for a number of reasons. But fundamentally, in my view, there has been a failure to engage early and effectively in relation to the secondary school strikes and in relation to the situation pertaining to the ASTI and the issues that they have raised. And the first issue relates, of course, to equal pay for newly qualified teachers. And it seems to me, for some reason, the government has not publicly committed to a pathway towards equal pay for newly qualified teachers, which would go a long way to dealing with that particular issue. Now, I understand and I know that the TUI and INTO made ground and made progress on that issue, but I did warn last week that the system may want to punish the ASTI because of staying outside Lansdowne Road, and I said that the system should resist the temptation. In my view, it hasn't resisted the temptation, and we're now in a situation where feelings are becoming more entrenched and where the resolution of the dispute could become much more difficult. And the second issue, which is why, in terms of yesterday's closure of schools, relates to substitution and supervision. Now, the ASTI are looking for flexibility in the Croke Park hours, and there's already been some flexibility shown on those already in terms of the TUI and INTO. Now, I support Lansdowne, and I accept that everything has to be resolved within Lansdowne. But in my view, the flexibility on Croke Park hours is there within Lansdowne. And always remember that before any Lansdowne came in, or before any Croke Park came in, teachers have been doing extracurricular activity for a long, long time. There's a lot of good teachers out there who get breast off and officialdom comes at them and says, we want you to pencil in this and pencil in that, because quite frankly they've been doing it for years in terms of sport, in terms of music, cultural activities and debating. We should keep that in the back of our head. That's always there in terms of the contribution that teachers make. So in other words, in my view, the issue of substitution and supervision can be dealt with if there's a will and there's a way within the Lansdowne Road Agreement. The third point I would make is the Leaving Certificate students and the Junior Certificate students are suffering too much. They are the real victims of this industrial dispute. And we know the centrality of the Leaving Certificate now, how difficult and challenging it is for any student in Leaving Cert year. And in my view, the absence of contingency planning led to the closure yesterday. Teachers did turn up, but the gates were locked, and the argument was made that they didn't have enough supervisory people to cover. In my view, it was within the capacity of school management to open the schools for the exam students, particularly for the Leaving Certificates. I don't believe there would have been a health and safety issue with terms of Leaving Certificate students being taught. And it is important because it is very pressurising on students today. And I think a greater effort should have been made in terms of the contingencies out of it, to open the schools for the exam students in particular. And I would put it to you, Taoiseach, do you accept that there was a failure on the government and the management side in terms of providing adequate contingency in relation to facilitating the opening of schools yesterday? And can you indicate when that issue is going to be resolved? And could you please indicate whether you are prepared to give a commitment on equal pay for newly qualified teachers in terms of the pathway, in terms of the successor to Lansdowne?
Taoiseach.
First of all, I am disappointed that this strike has continued. Let me confirm for you, Deputy Martin, that it is not anybody's intention or the intention that the system should penalise ASTI members. The situation that has arisen here is that there are 4 industrial disputes going on with the ASTI and the Department of Education. In respect of the first, the question of pay for new entrants, this has been the subject of long hours devoted by the Department of Education, the Minister, within Lansdowne Road, and you're aware of the increased opportunities that are there for permanent positions, for increases in pay from 15% to 22% for new entrant teachers, as applies in the case of INTO and TUI. And the Minister's dealt at some length about equality and what that actually means. In regard to supervision and substitution, what you seem to be suggesting is that the schools and the boards of management should be pressurised to supply personnel who would be vetted so that schools could be opened. But you are aware that the ASTI prevented principals from engaging in that. So this creates a difficulty where the people who suffer most now are the 220,000 students, particularly those in Junior Cert and Leaving Certificate exam classes, who do not have the opportunity to avail of the teachers teaching them these days. This is an issue that arose because the ASTI as a union unilaterally decided to reject the extra 1 hour per week. It is true to say that for years, of course, in all grades of teaching and many other public services, people have given of their voluntary time over and above stipulated hours. But this is a dispute now where teachers who turn up for school, the schools cannot be opened because of the fact that health and safety regulations and supervision is not envisaged there. Money is on the table to pay those teachers who want to teach, and that's one issue that I believe, in terms of substitution and supervision, could be resolved very quickly, which would mean that those teachers would receive their payments, the schools could open, the pupils could be taught, the parents would not be discommoded anymore, and teachers would be able to do the job that they set out to do. The other remaining 3 disputes are already under negotiation in respect of the new entrance and pay situation, where substantial money is on the table, where those benefits are available for the ASTI now and for those teachers who need that money. We're only a few weeks from Christmas. This is not by any means an ideal situation, but I would hope that the talks that are taking place will continue, and that a conclusion can be reached to it pretty quickly, Deputy Martin, where the schools can reopen, where you will have supervision and substitution, and where the payments on the table can be paid to the teachers. And I hope that the discussions that have taken place and successfully concluded in respect of new entrance pay for new teachers with TUI and INTO could also be followed suit with the ASTI. And the further 2 remaining disputes are ones for further discussion.
Thank you very much. Deputy Martin.
Hoping isn't going to solve it, isn't going to get the thing sorted, because on the supervision and substitution, I mean, if you just take leaving certificate students alone, in some schools you're talking about 100 students, in some 80, some 60, some might be higher than 100. Don't tell me it wasn't within the capacity of certain school managements to facilitate the opening of the schools, even to teach the leaving certificate students. And it's a serious issue because they get lost out on all of this debate. They're the pawns in between. But there's only 1 year you're doing your leaving certificate, and whether you like it or dislike it, it's a very crucial exam for the future development of young people and their career opportunities. And at the moment, there's complete uncertainty, and nobody can give them any clear pathway to resumption of their studies and their courses. And I think it was within the capacity. My suspicion is that the system and the department and the government said, let's bring this to a head and let's let them out. That's my suspicion, and that's why there was no will really to get the schools open and to get the supervision and substitution issue, particularly in terms of the exam students alone. If there was an issue with 500, I'd take that. But in terms of the leaving cert and the junior cert, I actually would question that point, that it wasn't within the capacity of the schools to open to facilitate the teaching of leaving certificate. And the final point, on newly qualified teachers and equal pay. Minister English said it last week on the Claire Bourne show. It's going to happen, he said. It will happen in the successor agreement. Every minister is nodding in the head and saying it's going to happen. Why can't the government say it publicly? I understand Minister Bruton said it before. So why can't the government come out and say there's a pathway to equality of pay for newly qualified teachers? It may be in the successor agreement to Lansdowne, but at least there's a time frame and there's a commitment and there's a pathway, which I think would go a long way, Taoiseach, to getting this sorted.
Taoiseach.
Hoping that this will resolve itself, because it won't. It will only resolve by continuation of the bilateral talks that are taking place between officials on both sides here. As you're aware, the President of the ASTI made a comment in respect of the WRC, and that's a matter for them, whether they become involved or not. But this is a dispute that has to be settled. And it's not a proper situation where 220,000 plus students are discommoded, their parents and indeed the teachers without pay. So the situation here, arising from supervision and substitution, resulted from the direct unilateral action of the ASTI, which I regret, back in the summer, not to work the extra hour per week. And that matter can be resolved quickly. And I would hope that, and more than hope, that there's a willingness to see an end to this particular dispute, which would allow the money on the table to be paid to the teachers, the pupils to be taught, and the schools get on with their business. And the remaining element of the collective benefits, or the benefits that come from the collective situation, are available to the ASTI teachers, and they need them now, and they are available now. And I trust that the continued bilateral discussions that are taking place will lead to that conclusion, and that conclusion quickly. Your question is a valid question, but it's one that should not have arisen I don't accept that government and the Minister and the Department of Education were lax here in not dealing with this. This has dragged on for quite some time, but it results in the 1 hour not being worked from a unilateral decision made by the ASTI union, and that has affected their own members to their detriment now, and there's money on the table to pay them. This is an issue, this particular issue is one that could be resolved very quickly.